Well, g'day North fans and welcome to the latest member Q&A presented by our health and wellbeing partner, AIA Vitality. I'm rapt to welcome our senior assistant coach, Johnny Blakey, midfield coach, Jordan Russell, forwards coach, Heath Rooney, and tools and development coach, Anthony Rocker. Thanks for joining us, boys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, boys, a big night at the mid-season draft last night. Jordan, wouldn't mind getting your thoughts on young Jacob Edwards, who arrived at the club last night.
Yeah, it's really exciting for our group, for Anthony Rocker and myself to get a young ruckman in. Obviously, Goldie's been the mainstay for a long time at the club. It's really exciting to get some youth involved. He's obviously shot up the ranks quite rapidly this last sort of 3 or 4 months. So the vision that we've seen, he looks a really likely type, really impressed with his aerial stuff, but not only that, just his ability to compete on the ground. He sort of looks like he's an extra midfielder. So that's always handy when the big guys can also join in on the ground. So it'll be exciting for us as a group to get him involved.
Now, he's still playing school footy. I imagine he's a bit of a longer-term prospect. And do we see him playing and training this year, or is it more of a longer-term prospect?
Yeah, I'm not too sure, because I think COVID throws another spanner in the works there as well. Obviously, being from an outside party, you can't get involved at this stage. So I think there's a few things we've just got to try and work out with that, and then talk with the school and how many games are left. And just try and figure out the best fit for him. But the minute we can get him down, we're excited and we'll rush him in as quickly as possible.
And Blakes, what about Charlie Ham's recruitment, a defender for you and a pretty silky left footer, I believe?
Yeah, he's got beautiful skills. It really catches your eyes, the way he's able to break the game open with that left foot of his. So very excited to have him. He'll be terrific to help us, exit our ball out of defence. He's able to take a good intercept mark as well. But the beauty of him, he really knows how to find the footy and use the footy. He sees options that others don't. So we're excited to get someone with that ability to kick the ball and find those hard to see options into our side.
Do you see him as the type of guy that could potentially come in this year and, knuckle down a spot in defence?
Look, you never know. I mean, obviously, it's going to be different for them coming in halfway through the season, getting to know all the boys, getting to know the new game plan. So it's going to be hard for them to initially get in and understand exactly how we want them to play. That's our job. We've got to get him up to speed as quickly as possible, and nothing's out of the question. As you've seen this year, a lot of the boys have had opportunities and chances, and it'll be no different to the 2 boys that we've just drafted.
I've got some questions from the fans now, guys. So Alex Pearson asked John Blakey, just interested in the process to assign coaching responsibilities. How do you decide who will take the backs, mids, etc., and how do you typically see this in a season-by-season role? So how do you boys break up the responsibility, I guess, is the question.
Well, I guess really the senior coach has the final say in exactly how he wants his team to look, and no doubt David's been able to do that. Obviously, he's worked with Heath before in Adelaide. I've had a long association with David through my playing days. Obviously, I played with him, and Geordie's got some expertise through the midfield. So that's how we've obviously set up this year. That's not to say that those roles stay the same. I mean, you see quite a few clubs changing the roles each year. But certainly from our point of view, that's something that the senior coach generally sets.
We've got a question here from Anthony Gatt, who says, thank you all for being part of this great club and being on the journey to our next flag in 2024, he reckons, which would be nice for us. My question is to all four of you, coming from different clubs, how do you see and think we are tracking as a football club, both on and off the field? So we might start with you, Heath, being a new arrival, of course.
Yeah, we would probably in the similar spot which I was used to last year with Adelaide, where they've, 2 young groups going through a transitional phase. Prior to coming here, I did a lot of work as far as looking at both lists and making a decision where, coming over here, understanding what I was about to walk into. And both clubs are probably on a similar journey. The difference is I think North have made a really conscious decision to change their list and rebuild. And even though not getting results at the moment, I think that decision is going to hold us in good stead next year and beyond. So I'm really excited, certainly as a forwards coach, to what the list looks like going forward. I know we brought in a new guy last night in Jacob. I'll be wrestling Geordie to get him to play as a forward versus a ruck in his initial stages. So that'll be an interesting discussion at match committee. But certainly the club's in really good position from a list point of view. We just got to start to add some more talent through draft and hopefully bring in some experience as well to support that.
Anthony, I'm interested in your take, mate. You've obviously been at a couple of really big clubs in Sydney and Collingwood in particular. What's your take on North Melbourne so far, mate? You've been here for probably 4 or 5 months now. I'd love to get your take on the feel of the club.
Yeah, so from where I come from, Collingwood were quite advanced from, they played in 2018 grand final and were building up to that time. So us as a Kangaroo squad, we're a little bit away from that at the moment. They've got a really strong list who drove the standards and that ability. So, the guys here, it's been very accommodating, a really young list. As he said before, we've had a massive changeover of players. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get to that sort of standard, but I'm sure we're on the right path. And
Jordan, you've obviously been at a couple of really strong clubs as well, in the Bulldogs and Carlton. What's your sort of take on the club so far?
Yeah, I'd reiterate the points Heath and Pebs have just mentioned. I think the growth that we've been able to see in our team, in our lines, and as individuals in the first 11 games is probably what hopefully the supporters can see that as well on how well we're actually tracking. Yep, it doesn't show that yet in the wins column, but behind the scenes, I think we're all really optimistic and positive around the gains that our players are making. And I think that if you continue to see that week-to-week improvement, us as a coaching group are concentrating so much on that at the minute, because we know that later down the track, the wins will start to come. It's about really just honing in on the individuals and our lines to continue to progress from week to week and month to month.
Blake, so I imagine the club's changed a fair bit since your time as a player, mate. I even just looking around these facilities right now, everything's completely different, but you've returned, and how much are you enjoying your time at the club? And you obviously see an exciting time ahead to come back to North.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a very, very different place. So there used to be a couple of portables and an old grandstand here when I finished playing. So to see this facility, it's absolutely fantastic. And you're right, I was very, very keen to get back. Obviously, I've got a playing history here and being involved in a couple of premierships. And so it's always a club that, holds a spot in your heart, the club that you actually have great success at. And so it's great to return and hopefully be part of what's going to be an exciting new era for this football club.
One from Jeremy Entwistle, excuse my pronunciation if that's not right, but one for you, Heath Uni. With the soft cap reducing in 2021, meaning less coaching staff, how do you guys find the extra workload if you've got a few less coaches and that sort of thing? Are you guys having to do even more than you usually would? And we know you guys are some of the hardest workers at the club. You hear constantly. So interested to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, every club's different on how they've spent their money. Our coaching group is fantastic in that what's happened is you've just had to have guys who are multi-skilled, so guys that can do a number of things. And probably the area that I think, it's only my thoughts, is that it's in development is probably where some of your numbers have been pulled away. So what's happened is for a line coach, you've got back into getting your hands dirty and out on the track, which I know all coaches love doing. So sometimes you prioritise where you focus your energy. And for this group, the group we're working with at the moment, a lot of our coaches are hands-on out on the ground, teaching the craft of playing. So, yeah, it's reduced in numbers, but it's certainly, I don't think it's reduced in quality of coaching. It just, the line coaches have got their hands dirty a lot more out on the field. And I'm JB's probably one that can either challenge that or affirm what I'm trying to say.
And 100% agree with you. We've got two great development coaches here in Brownie and Lee Adams. They're doing a terrific job for us. and we've got some great analysts that help us do a lot of the background work for us too, to try and help with that workload. So yeah, it might be lower numbers, but we all manage quite well, and you know, that's what we love doing anyway. I mean, that's why we're involved in the game. We can no longer play, so the next best thing is obviously coaching and trying to develop those next boys that are coming through, and that's what we love. So you know, we're very fortunate to be in this position where we're still being able to help this team develop.
I think, Jordan, the fans would love to get a feel for what an average week involves for you guys. I mean, I see you constantly at the club. You know, you guys are doing a lot of hours and that sort of thing. But after a game, for example, what's the process from there leading into the next game, and what are you guys working on in particular?
Yeah, great question. I think pretty much post-game, let's say tonight game, we're obviously pretty fried from the mental workload of the pressure of AFL and grinding the way through those opportunities in those games. You probably go to bed still thinking about the game, but sort of get up the next day and you're probably looking at anywhere between 4 and 6 hours watching the game back, coding it, finding out why we went well, where our improvement areas are, how our individuals have gone. So that's quite a lengthy process. And then sort of by the time you come into the club for a coaches meeting on a Monday, for instance, we sort of sit down as a coaching group for about sort of 2 or 3 hours and digest each of the areas, again, including the individuals. And that's quite a lengthy process. I mean, by the time we actually get the traction with the players, we've probably looked at 7, 8, 9 hours plus worth of vision to get a grasp on what's actually happened. So then by the time you get to the players, you're only really showing them sort of half an hour to 40 minutes worth of sort of teaching and education. So it's not a lot of face-to-face time, considering how much we do as a coaching group. So you've got to be really pointy and sharp and clear with your messaging to be able to sort of get bang for buck in what you're actually trying to educate the players on. Obviously, there's plenty of on deck training sessions with a couple of craft opportunities, and then a main session later in the week. But the biggest thing for us at the minute is all the 4 coaches on here at the minute. We're all new to the club. Nobes is new to the club. We've brought in a whole new game plan, and we've obviously got all new ideas coming from other clubs as well. So I think a lot of the background stuff that we do when we're here as coaches is discussing training, where we're going with our game plan. Is it working? Do we need to be tweaking a few different things? So we spend a lot of time in Nobes' office discussing ways to continually improve this group, and to their credit, they're taking everything on board. And as I said before, we are seeing lots of positive signs with our group, but it's relentless, because sort of by the time you get to the Wednesday day off, you're already looking at next week's opponent. So you're sort of putting another 4 or 5, 6 hours into them in prep for next week's game. So it's a busy working week, but as JB said, I think there's not too many other jobs we'd actually want to be doing because of how much interaction we get with the players. And then when you get a win or you see improvement individually, it's so exciting.
I might stick with you for this one, Jordan, from Caleb Van Ray on Facebook. How hard is it to stick to your plans and strategies when you're not winning? And I think, like Nobes has obviously spoken about the process a fair bit and trusting that. I imagine that's the same from you guys.
I think that's where the background work that we do as a coaching group, a lot of what we've been talking about is looking longer term, not so much shorter term, because I think you can fall into the trap of then having to tweak and change it from week to week too much, and then you don't actually give the players clarity. So what Nobes has been able to do really well, along with JB and Hinder and Pebs as well, is we've got a long-term viewpoint on it. So everything that we're doing is looking for not just the end of this year, but it's also 2022 and beyond. So I think that helps you stay true to what we're believing in. Definitely week to week, there are little tweaks because of what the opposition are doing, but the main game plan and what we're trying to achieve is pretty much there consistently from week to week, regardless of what the scoreboard says.
Maybe one for Anthony Rocker now, and from Jason Stern. The question is, how hard is it having so many senior guys unavailable? And I think from a forwards perspective, perhaps, Pebbles, you can talk about Charlie Comben not being out this year and not being out there this year has really affected our availability. And how much does that affect, the ability to be able to pick our best side and also give opportunities to young guys coming through?
Yeah, Charlie's, excuse me, Charlie's been injured for most of the year. So it's, hopefully we can get him back towards the end of the year and get a couple of maybe 3-4 games into him, just to get him involved and back into footy. But it is tough when you've got so many injuries, but the opportunity it gives for our younger players coming through is massive. For the likes of, even though Tom Powell doesn't play in the full line, that much, he plays more mid, more high half forward. It gives him the opportunity. Will Phillips will get an opportunity, and we'll have more that have an opportunity in Eddie Ford and a couple of others to go through there. But we might see Big X get through there over the next few weeks. But he's having some good form at VFL football. So. And the other opportunity is, the older guys who, like Big Tom Campbell, who's been in and out of the side, and it's given him a great opportunity to try and maintain his status in the side. So it's been good opportunities for the young and good opportunities for the old as well.
Blake, you can probably speak to that as well, mate, with Lukey McDonald and Robbie Tarrant and Aidan Corr all out. Not ideal, obviously, but it gives you a chance to see guys like R2 and Lockie Young and these guys that are new to the club, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. Connor Menadew's another one that's came through there. Obviously, Hawley's played a bit of a different role for us down back as well this year and has been going quite well. So, it does give opportunity to others. Obviously, it would be nice, Corey comes across from GWS, and it would be nice to have him out here, and our reigning best and fairest winner obviously not playing at the moment. So it'd be nice to get those two boys back into the side. Don't make any mistake about that. So, and Robbie Tarrant's very close. He'll either play this week, if not the following week. So he's very close to returning. So slowly some of these players will come back and integrate back into the side.
Are those guys still staying involved in terms of helping out those younger guys coming through? Your Lukey Max and Robbie Tarrant as leaders. I imagine they still have a pretty active role.
They really do. Just to see the work that those boys put in with our younger group as well. I mean, each week we sit down with the players that are involved in our line and go through vision and tape with them of their game and show areas of growth and obviously what they're doing well. But, quite often you've got Robbie Tarrant sitting in with you. You've got Luke sitting in with you, going through the tapes with their boys, offering their suggestions. Also, when we're planning on Oppo, that these guys have played on the best week in, week out, and they're there to give advice to those guys that might be playing on them in the upcoming week. So the work that they do as senior players and senior leaders of the club is really fantastic.
Just continuing on that theme of development, Ashley asks a question for Heath Uni. In your experience, what are the common things that hinder a young player's development, and what sort of things you do to get your best out of the young players in the team?
Well, my experience working with the younger guys is purely they're so impatient to be really good and want to play very quickly. And ultimately, sometimes they forget what they're good at and they go chasing things that can become irrelevant to them to get into the team or play consistently, and they become confused and lose clarity. And so as a coach, it's really important to strip it back and make it really, really simple for them. And I think as a footy club, as JB touched on earlier, and Brownie's got a lot of experience in development, and Patch, obviously, they do a wonderful job being able to support the line coaches and make it really simple. And I think that's what Nobes and the other coaches have done really well. We've simplified it for our younger group, which allows them to go out in what's a really chaotic game of footy to make it really, really clear for them on how they're going to execute their roles. So a young player can get in that trap very quickly and all of a sudden find themselves out of form. So it's our job to keep them grounded and keep them really focused on the fundamentals of their position and their game.
We'll take a quick break from our chat with the coaches to tell you about AIA, our life, health and wellbeing partner. When you join AIA Health, they'll not only be supporting you to lead a healthier, longer, better life, but they're also giving back to the club. You'll be protected with up to 70% back on extras. and you'll be rewarded for your small, healthy steps through AIA Vitality, their science-backed health and wellbeing program. Find out how you can give back to the club while saving money on a range of North benefits when you join AIA Health. Head to aia.com.au/NMFC.
One that you might want to fight amongst, but from Steve Pyle, it's given Nick Larkey's one out a lot of the time. Would it work better to have Captain Jack play forward? Now, I'm sure Blake, you probably say no because you want to keep him down back, but we've obviously seen Jack up forward a little bit in the past. He's had a huge year in the back line. Blake's, where do you see his best position at the moment? I mean, it'd be handy to have one in every line, I imagine, of Jack.
He's obviously he's our skipper and we love the way that he plays his footy, and, he gives his heart and soul every week. And look, at the start of the year when Nobes went to him and said, we're thinking of putting you down back, it was, yep, no problem, not an issue. He just wants to do whatever's best for the team. And if we think that's forward, if we think that's through the mid, if we think that's back, that's where he'll play, and he's happy to do so. So he's a great leader of this football club, and I've been really pleased with his year on what he's been able to do, considering he spent very little time in the defensive line. So a couple more Jack Zeebles would be nice.
Yeah, mate, I reckon we'd want a few more Cunners as well. And this next question is about Ben Cunnington for Jordan Russell. He watched the Cunners mic'd up video and said it was brilliant, but said, how much does he actually say on the track and how much does he help these younger blokes? I mean, I know we sort of took the piss out of him a little bit, and everyone should jump on and watch that video because it's a good one on nmfc.com.au. But how much impact does Cunners have on that younger group in the midfield, Jordan?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was a fantastic video you guys put together. He does talk a lot more than what you guys portrayed in that video. But Cunners is, I think, over his journey, he's been very much a guy who's shown the way and jump on my back and come with me. And I think that the last couple of years speaking to him only recently, and then obviously my experience with him so far this year is he's really open to helping these guys. He wants to help them get better and fast track their development, the same way that he's spoken about a couple of guys who helped him. He's still quite, he's learning and growing on the best way to be able to deliver that stuff to the younger boys. But the fact of how selfless he is on the ground, you actually see what he's trying to do now, where he's trying to help others and inject them into the game as well, and give them opportunities to play good footy. He's been massive for those boys. And unfortunately, the Tom Powells and Taron Thomases of the world don't quite have his strengths just yet to be able to do the same sort of things that he can do. But what he teaches them is the little technical elements of how you do actually use your bodywork, the timing of when to get to the spot to get that clearance. And obviously the big one, having the voice and the connection with the ruckman to be able to organise and structure up what you want from your midfield group. So he's been fantastic, and it's great to see him come back after a bit of a layoff last year, obviously, and start to put some really strong performances together.
I think fans will appreciate that while Cunners is pretty quiet, when he does speak, he's very genuine and he says things that matter. So he speaks up when it matters. He doesn't do much media for us, unfortunately, but every time he has done media, he comes across amazingly genuine. And that's the great thing about him. He doesn't want to do media, but we'd love him to do more in the future if he wants to. So here's a question for all you guys. Who's the hardest trainer at the club and who's impressed you most since joining North? We might start with you, Heath.
Oh, look, there's a number of them, but the one that probably I didn't know much about, who the way he goes about and he puts it all out there, is Kane Turner. I think he trains with great intent. I think he wants to be good, and because of that, he's able to go out and play with that level of intent. So I didn't know much about Kane, even though he comes from the same town. But for me to see firsthand of how he goes about his training, he's impressed me from day dot.
What about you, Pebbles?
I agree with that, Kane Turner. But the other one for me is Big Tom Campbell. He just wants to learn footy. You know, he's 29 years of age and got a whole lot more footy left in him. But he's just one who just wants to learn. Sometimes wants to learn too much, but look, he's always on the ball, always trying to improve himself, trying to bring other guys along with him. So he's one that who has impressed me.
Lakes?
Yeah, well, I'll stick with one of my defenders along the same lines as what Pebs was speaking about then, was Benny Mckay. His preparation and work that he does to, study his opponents, look for their strengths and weaknesses, get himself out on the track to be doing extras, non-stop, working on his game, his aerial work, his ground level work, his footwork to be able to stick with these guys. I just think his preparation to get the best out of himself is very, very good, and so he's one that comes to mind for me.
And Jordan?
Yeah, for me, the guy that probably impressed me day one was Jai Simpkin. He actually called me. He was one of the only one. I think he was the only player that actually gave me a buzz when I joined the club, which impressed me to begin with. And then to see how hard he pushes himself, training to training, especially in pre-season, he's carried that into in-season training. He's such a young man, but he's already our vice captain. So I think that says a lot around how his teammates hold him in such high regard. But I think he leads the way with his work rate and want to get better. He's always trying to improve his game, much like what the other guys have said about their favourites, I guess, JB being his favourite. So he's often spending more time and one of the last ones out on the track. So it's no reason why he continues to play some good footy for our footy club.
One for Blake's. Firstly, from Hussein Karakalak. Firstly, I'm enjoying every bit of this rebuild, so thank you all. Which of the youngsters yet to debut should we be most excited about?
Well, I mean, the three that have debuted in Lazzaro, Pal and Phillips, we couldn't speak higher of those guys. I think Eddie Ford could be the next one that could jump up. He's just got some really raw talent to be able to mark the ball. He's a competitive beast. Loves to put pressure on. He's selfless in the way that he brings his teammates into games. He's still learning the game and has got things to work on. But I think he could do something if given an opportunity at the next level. So he's one to keep an eye on.
What about this one for Heath? Just talk about the importance of having that first win. I mean, it was a long time coming, and for the boys who are young and have come in and probably lost those first few games, it would have been tough. That feeling of just having a win for the boys and how important that is for their development going forward, to have that feeling.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, that's what we're here to do, is win games of footy, irrespective of what phase of the development we're in. But more importantly, I think, is for them to build belief in what we're trying to do. So we can sit up in front of them and explain to them what we're trying to do, whether it's game style, and provide them positive affirmation and areas to work on. But ultimately, the win builds belief in your game style, and they've built that over a period of time leading into that win. I thought there was a period for about 3 weeks where our improvements were coming, and it was great reward for that effort. And I think the second half of the year, they've got a taste of it now, and they believe what we're trying to do, and we'll add different layers to that. And as a result, with the process, we'll hopefully get reward for that with some more wins in the second half of the year.
What about you, Anthony, having played in some really successful sides in the past, just that importance of getting that first win for a young group and just to build that belief?
Yeah, it is important. We talk about the development v winning, but they both work hand in hand. So look, the things that we've been trying to teach, like he said, were leading up to that moment. We almost got the win against the Demons the week before, and we're probably just a couple of runners too short by the end of the game. So we felt like that game against the Hawks, where we got the win, was just a lot of good work, good reward for hard work.
One for Blake's. Guys like Aaron Hall, Jack Siebel and R2 have all shifted into the back line despite never really having played there. How do you go about coaching someone who's new to the position, especially if they're deep into their careers like Jack Siebel and Aaron Hall?
Well, I think those two guys that you mentioned, I think they're seasoned campaigners. They've been around for a long time. So it's not as if they don't understand football. And it just gives them a different perspective as well. I think, obviously, those guys have both played forward and both played mid at different stages through their career, but it's the rounding of their whole football journey, I guess. So to get them back there, it's not as if they're novices and they're wholly new to the game. I mean, basically the game's about competing, and we know that those seasoned campaigners are still playing for a reason, and that's because they're competitors. So they go down there with great pride in the way they go about their footy. Obviously, there's things to learn, and they're working on those type of things. But it's no coincidence that they're able to change their game and be good players in different positions.
Just Hawley, mate. He's come a long way in the last few weeks. He's just racking up the footy off half back, but he's also pretty damaging going through that corridor as well. And he's willing to take those risky kicks. How important is it to have someone like that in the back half that is open to setting up the play for the guys?
Yeah, I think if you look across the competition, you see a lot of damaging half backs. You think of Caleb Daniel and guys like that are able to find the ball and bring their teammates into the game, become critical players to your team and to your ball movement. And Hawley, I guess, has taken that role on for us a little bit. So certainly you need those type of players that are able to break the lines, gain meters, put you into different spots to be able to score. So, we're pretty pleased with the way that he's been able to do that for us.
Probably one for Jordan this time from Wayne Mccoy. What sort of drills are incorporated to improve on skills and decision-making and ensure players are skilled on both sides of the body, as opposed to being too reliant on their dominant side?
Yeah, great question. We do a hell of a lot of drills in total. A lot of the main sessions are broken up into sort of fundamentals, skill, execution, and then some more of the game sense, game plan type drills. The two sort of main sessions through the week that we utilise for the skill acquisition type are some of our lower days with our craft days. So in regards to the kicking, we put them in all different situations and scenarios that they'll find themselves in on a game day, which helps them with the pattern recognition for when they're out there. And then with the decisions, it was not rocket science, but you just continue to put them in situations where it's a 3-on-2 or a 4-on-4, where they've got to find ways to find targets, which helps us work on some of our offensive patterns as well. But first and foremost, we're putting them in situations where they'll find themselves on game day. So it helps with dealing with the pressure and a little bit sometimes of the anxiety of the decision-making under the pressures of the game. So there's no doubt it's a fundamental part of any footballer to be able to play that way, but also use both feet.
I imagine it's hard to really completely simulate what it is like on a game day when the pressure comes from the crowd, players around you, 40 guys. But is that the case?
Yeah, obviously there's external factors that you, like the crowd, that you can't bring into training. It might be a costly exercise to do that. But what you try and do is you try and break the skill down. You work on the technical elements, the skill act performance, and then you sort of put it into a bit more of an uncontrolled environment with pressure, decisions, etc., spots on the ground. So there's plenty of different ways to do it, but I guess you can't ever emulate what it's like at Marvel in front of 40,000.
Another one for you, Geordie, from Joshua Chapman. What has Will Phillips' role been this year, and just how's he tracking in general? We obviously saw him play a couple of games at VFL level and really start to grow some confidence, but where's he at?
Yeah, Will's actually been fantastic. I think if you come into an AFL club as a number 3 draft pick, there's lots of external pressure on you to play week to week and perform week to week, which I think is always unfair because certain players are at different levels. Will's certainly capable of playing some really good AFL football. I think the thing for him is it's been challenging. At the minute, we've got a nice group of midfield players who are playing some really good football, which has probably forced him to play a little bit more forward time, which I don't think that he would have done too often in his junior football. So again, it's another bit of resilience for him to get through that, to continue to work on another part of his game. But although he hasn't played all 11 games, what he's actually been able to do is grow as an individual, his mental strength, he's learning a second role, and he's such a diligent professional for such a young kid. He almost shows up a lot of the older guys because of the way that he goes about it. So he's gone along really well. He's growing in 2 different roles. His ability to continue to push himself and challenge himself day to day. He annoys the hell out of all the coaches because he's consistently asking questions around how to do this and how does he get better at that, which is a great quality to have for a young kid. So he's going to be fine. It's just continuing to stick to the process, and we'll see him back in the ones very shortly.
One way I've been able to get to know my health better recently is by becoming an AIA Vitality member. The program is part of my AIA health policy and has a whole range of science-backed tools and tests to help me improve my health and well-being. The best bit? The more you work on improving your health, like getting your step count up or tracking your sleep, the more you'll get rewarded. You can help the club by earning rewards like the Roo Shop vouchers or choose from a range of popular retailers. Now's the time to make healthier choices that benefit your life, the club, and your hip pocket. Head to aia.com.au/NMFC to learn more about your AIA Health with AIA Vitality.
I think it's really struck me this year with the young guys is just the maturity they come into a football club with. And you do a media interview with them on the first day and they're just remarkably confident and so well mannered. Now, Charlie Lazzaro is another one. Geordie, if you could speak about his development so far.
Yeah, Charlie's going really well. He's played time on the wing. He's spent time forward. And I think if you asked him, he'd probably say coming through his junior footy, he was a midfielder. So the amazing thing about the crop of young boys that we've got is their ability to learn a different position really quickly. They're learning new game plans and they're trying to do it across a couple of different roles. I don't think you can underestimate how difficult that is. And I think you're spot on the way that they want to improve and get better. They're genuine people as well. So they take feedback on board really well. They're all really coachable. I think that's the reason why they've been able to play pretty good footy for parts of the game consistently so far this year. And Charlie's exactly the same. He's energetic and he's bubbly and he's like Will. He'll keep going until you tell him to stop or to shut up. So it is. We've got some very talented young boys at the club this year.
One for Blake's and probably what comes with a developing side. But at the start of the season, when you arrived, which areas do you think we really needed to work on and how are we going with the progress there, do you think?
Well, I mean, obviously, I spent the last 14 years in Sydney, so that's where my thoughts were at that time. So coming into a new club and when I did accept the role, we didn't have a senior coach. So it's been a real whirlwind because it's not until you get your senior coach that you can actually develop your game plan. And so we've had to do that. Obviously, there's been a limited pre-season to teach that game plan as well because of COVID. And then you get into a season where, obviously you're still developing that game plan as well as trying to, teach it to your players. So it is challenging and there is going to be ups and downs, but we certainly think we're on the right path. And as the boys have said, we think we should be able to, in the back end of the year, really show this type of footy that we want to play.
Another one from Brad Wood, and it comes to what Geordie was saying earlier, just the limited amount of time that you guys have with the players each week to be able to work on things because you're going from week to week so quickly. But maybe one for you, Heath. How do you work with your groups as a whole and then allocate time for strengths and weaknesses for each player?
Yeah, it's a really good point because we're still developing our game style as we go week to week. One thing the coaching group led by Nobes did probably post the Bulldogs game is be really, really clear on how we want our game style to look like in 12 months to 18 months time. And rather than be seduced or dictated by what's happening week to week. Be really clear on how we're going to coach these guys to the game or how we want them to play. That's collectively, like how do we want them to play. So we've really honed in how we want our game style to look. And as a result, we're seeing some improvements in the way we're going to play. And then individually, with their weapons and their areas of development, that's more spent on an individual. So making sure he gets enough time in both areas of his game. And that's where the development coaches come in and support the line coaches on what we want to work on. And we've got to remind our players to continually work on what they're good at, because ultimately the game gives you feedback what you're not good at, but we sometimes get clouded by that. And, so that's the difference between individuals and probably collective on how we're going about building our game style.
So Benny Mckay has had a belter so far this year. What are some of the little things you can work on him to make him even better? I mean, he's a bit of a star as it is, and he's had an amazing year. Is there any areas of his games that he actually needs to build on further?
Oh, look, you're always, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're Ben Cunnington, you're always got to keep developing your game, because if you don't, you quickly get left behind. So he's constantly working on different things. He's very, very good at nullifying his opponent, and we think he can be even a stronger force or a greater presence, if you want to call it that, right across our team in the way that he plays his footy to be able to help his teammates out in their contests as well. So he's working on things all the time to improve. You've got to remember he's only played 20 odd games. He hasn't played a lot of footy, so he's actually still learning his craft. And albeit he's doing it very well, he's got to continually improve and continually look for ways to make sure that he stays on top of his game. And that's why I mentioned him before, because he really puts the work in there to do that.
I imagine you can probably comment on that one as well, Heath, because you're the forwards coach and your guys are having to play on Benny Mckay at training every week. I imagine he doesn't make it easy for you.
No, and it's spot on. And that's when you start to get real development and growth in your team, when you start to get that internal competition, irrespective of what ends of the ground or what positions they're playing. So for Larks to play on buckets every week at training, it can only hold Nick in great stead for long-term development. And once again, to reinforce what JB's saying, like Larks has only played 20 odd games. Cam's only played his 50th game most recently. So our team's littered with all that, with guys who are still learning their craft, albeit are learning from the guys who are experienced in the team. So to get a full season into some of into those guys and continually develop can only hold the team in good stead going forward.
And while we're talking about the forwards, Heath, Eddie Ford, I wouldn't mind getting an update on his progress at the moment. I mean, he's really improved in the midfield role in the VFL at times, and I imagine you want to keep him up forward, but how do you see his progress so far?
Yeah, I think JB alluded before about he's probably one that's not far off from getting an opportunity. It's always challenging in your second tier team when you've got so many injuries for you guys to continually develop. And unfortunately for Eddie, he's playing forward with no other AFL listed guys at times. So to understand and learn the way we want to move as a forward group, trying to build synergy with guys that you don't train with can be difficult, and as a result can sometimes have an impact on your development. But I've been really impressed in probably the last month with Eddie in the way he's starting to understand training standards. He's understanding the way his game is packaged together, and we've spoke about it more recently. Would Eddie be even better at the next level up, given a structured game style? And but I think JB said his enthusiasm, the way he goes about it, if he continually puts that amount of energy into his game, he's going to be a very good player for us.
And we might just get Anthony to talk a little bit about Tristan Sherry, because he's come very close to making his way into the team. He's just been held out by Tommy Campbell's good form at the moment, more than anything. But he's obviously on the right track, Anthony.
Yeah, it was really close with TC and Tristan last week, and TC done enough to keep his spot in the team. So, and X hasn't done anything wrong. Like his form in the VFL has been quite consistent. So, look, if he can keep putting that form together, it's going to force the coaches to really, make that happen. So, look, he's got to keep doing the good things that he's doing, his ruck work and his ruck craft and his follow up, and then his ability to mark the ball forward and really impact the scoreboard, which will really help us at senior level.
Now, we know he's worked pretty closely with Nobes at previous clubs, but Blakes, you probably haven't worked with David as much in a coaching sense previously. Can you just tell us what's his style and how well does he fit in at North, and how much does he sort of work closely with you coaches to continue to drive the players' performance?
Well, I think that's one of his greatest strengths, is to be able to work collaborative. It's hard to say that word, collaboratory. Say that word.
That'll do.
But the work in collaboration with the rest of the coaches. So that's what he does really, really well. Obviously, his experience and knowledge in a vast amount of roles right through this system holds him in unbelievable stead to take our side forward. He understands fully the coaching aspect of it, and that's obviously why the club appointed him as coach. But his knowledge of all the other areas in the roles that he's held just holds this club in really, really good stead. So, it's great to work with him. Obviously, I played with him for a few years at Fitzroy. Our paths went different ways as our football journeys went different ways, and to come back now and to work with him, it's been really, really beneficial for me. I mean, obviously, as coaches, we need to keep learning and developing ourselves all the time as well to make sure that we don't, just rely on things that have happened in the past, and we keep educating our players in the way that they need to be educated. And David's really, really strong on the education aspect of our playing group, and it's one of the big reasons. Obviously, Heath has got an amazing background with teaching, and that's exactly why Heath is here and helping us in this space, because it's so important. As you say, you don't get a lot of time. So when you get time with these players, you've got to make sure that the education aspect is absolutely spot on. And we're very fortunate to have him to be able to direct us in that space with his teaching background. So it's been fantastic to work with these guys. Everyone's got different strengths, but we all work together to hopefully show you some results out on the field.
And Jordan, your interactions with Nobes so far as well, mate. You've come into a new club, and how have you found it so far with a new coach in Nobes?
Yeah, I think much of what JB just said is spot on. I think for me personally, there's so much involved in the midfield and stoppages, and everyone has a different opinion, and there's so many different ways to assess it, coach it, teach it. And I think Nobes has been great for me around challenging me in regards to wanting more, asking for more, and then more around how to coach it, and just be really simple with our group, and being a sort of a younger coach. I've only really been coaching for 5 or 6 years, and sort of the first time really getting a go at AFL level, previously being in development. So coming into an environment where I'm constantly learning week to week, day to day, game to game, and Nobes has been fantastic around challenging my philosophies and my thought processes around how I want to coach, and more specifically what to coach with our midfield group. So I feel like I've come on in leaps and bounds through his guidance and his challenges and he's just trying to do it to make me better, and he does it across the board to make us own better. So I think if he's asking the players to continue to lift their standards, and it's only fair for us as coaches to continue to get better and better.
Just a couple more, boys. Greg Fletcher, we might throw this one to Heath Uni. Can you comment about the interaction of the VFL program with the AFL one? It's obviously tough for them this year with injuries and heavy losses, but we'd like them to see them do well as well.
Yeah, I think firstly, Patch and Lee Adams and Gavin Brand do a wonderful job with the VFL. Obviously, we got our squad together fairly late, so their ability to be able to educate them teach them the way we want to play, albeit that we got our new coaching structure and then they're trying to replicate the game style that we want to do. And they got reward for effort a couple of weeks ago against Essendon, and that was in the coming weeks. You know, we saw glimpses of them playing well. It's always difficult with COVID, obviously, to be able to integrate your players, both teams together. We're able to do it through the pre-season, been really tough in season. But I'm a really big believer that having the two programs working side by side and having some success only holds your football club in a really strong position. So the guys are working enormous hours in our development area to make sure that those VFL players have got a really clear understanding how we want our whole football club to play, and they're doing a wonderful job. And you see glimpses of it, albeit they're not getting great results as far as for their effort they're putting in, but you can see glimpses of the way the AFL plays in the VFL, and that's a great reflection of the coaching that's getting done down there.
Just one more from Keith Payne to Johnny Blakey. John, I consider you and Mark Roberts to be two of the shrewdest pickups from other clubs ever. Both of you were selfless and always willing to do the team thing. Who do you see of the younger crew particularly fitting that mould today?
The younger crew. Well, it's something we try to instill in all our players, and probably one of the values that we hold here at the club. So I think successful teams, you've got to have selfless players. Probably the one that sticks in my mind, and he might not be the youngest player, but Kane Turner, he's absolutely selfless. 1 week we've got him playing as a pressure forward. Next week we've got him playing as a shutdown mid, and the following week we've got him playing as a shutdown defender. And his ability just to take those roles on, but not only take them on, get those roles completed and win those roles has been absolutely first class this year. I mean, obviously he's now part of our leadership group as well, but that's a player that jumps to my mind as a selfless player that is willing to do whatever job's asked of him for the better of the team. And at the moment, I'd say he'd be carrying the flag.
Yeah, I guess that comes to the value of a role player, doesn't it? I mean, there's guys that are going to have 30, there are guys that are going to have 5 goals. But Kane Turner's not your highest possession getter, but he's doing what he needs to do, isn't he? He's playing his role, and you can't underestimate the importance of that, I guess, Blakes.
No, exactly right.
All right, beautiful, guys. I think that's it. Thank you very much for your time. I know you guys are really busy, so I'm sure the fans would really appreciate you spending 45 minutes to an hour out of your day and answering all these questions from the fans. So thanks, guys, and thanks very much to AIA, our presenting partner. We're really happy to have you guys today. Thank you very much. Cheers, guys.